Cock lovers rejoice! Our guest heretic for this episode is Tamara Staples, a photographer that combines her love of art and cock into picture books. Today we will learn what got her so interested in cocks, what is her favorite cock of all time, and how the photography and chickens come together. Coming up next on the Nutrition Heretic Podcast.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
If you're still confused about what to eat and not getting the results you thought you'd get by going organic, go to nutritionheretic.com and download the shit list of 7 health foods to avoid like the plague for free. The shit list details what health food companies want you to believe about the crap they peddle and why the real foods they're meant to replace are far better. Stop letting big health food dump all over you and download the shit list today.
Fat is bad for you.
I just pop a pill and I'm fine.
Meat is murder.
It's time for bad food punishment. It's time for real nourishment. It's time for the Nutrition Heretic.
The following program is provided as information only and may not be construed as medical or health advice. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. No action or inaction should be taken solely on the basis of the information provided here. Please consult with a licensed healthcare professional or doctor on any matter relating to your health and well-being.
Aloha and welcome to the Nutrition Heretic Podcast. This is Adrienne Hugh, the Nutrition Heretic, coming to you from sunny Waimea in Hawaii. And it is, we're coming in on Christmas, guys. And you know what that means. It's time to get your copy of 50 Ways to Eat Cock. This is my season, y'all. This is when, people decide that it's the perfect time to enjoy a little cock during the holidays. And I have found from my Amazon reviews that more than anything, this book seems to do really well, although after the Me Too movement, this could change. But it seems to do really well at office parties. Christmas grab bags and things like that. So just keep it in mind. So as you guys know that when I wrote the book, I didn't actually own any chickens, but now I do. And my neighbors, well, I live in a neighborhood now, and to keep the neighborhood quiet, I had to get rid of my cock. I had to let him go. And yeah, it was sad because we really liked him. We called him Black Beauty because he was really pretty. He was a wild cock. And I think that these wild Hawaiian chickens are descended from some English, I forget what the breed is called, but they look a lot like some British old breeds that I think just kind of went wild when they got here. So that brings me to today's guest heretic, Tamara Staples. She is the photographer for The Fairest Fowl, as well as another book called The Magnificent Chicken. Welcome to the show, Tamara. I keep wanting to call you Tamara, like wheat-free tamari, but but you're Tamara, like camera, as you
Tamara, like camera. Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
So tell me, what got you so interested in fowl, in cocks?
Well, I came to fall in love with the cock because my favorite uncle is a breeder of chickens, and he invited me to go to a poultry show many, many years ago. I had never been before. I knew he had chickens in his backyard, and they were purebred. Of course, that was all I knew. And when I went to the poultry show, I walked in to the room. I mean, it was this gigantic room of, I don't know, 500 different types and breeds of chickens. And I was mesmerized by the variety of the shapes, the colors, the sizes. And it was sort of like, love at first sight. I was blown away by what I was seeing. And I didn't really know that much about anything that anyone even knew about all these different, this outlet of like show poultry, basically. Have you heard?
No, I was going to say, I hadn't really contemplated poultry shows. I knew about places where you could, like markets down in the Bronx where you could like buy live chicken to, have them slaughter right there for you. Or at least they did in the 70s. But, I was unaware of the poultry show, like the dog show or the goat, a 4-H kind of thing.
It's fascinating. I mean, most people, I think, either they see them at like the fairs that they go to in the summer, or that's basically what they know. But actually, there is quite a web of poultry shows all over the country.
Wow.
And in many other countries as well. I mean, they're very popular in Australia, for instance, and England and France. And so it's just like this interesting subculture of people who pick their favorite breeds of chickens and they spend their lives in pursuit of creating the perfect specimen through breeding.
Right. So how much are chickens being bred today, and for what qualities are we looking for that hasn't already been done, basically? Because I'm hopefully before Christmas we'll have my coloring book out. But I'm looking at people are talking about their Australorps and their Orpingtons and these heritage breeds. What are some of the newer breeds being bred for?
Well, there's a variety of breeds that happen now. When most of the people are breeding to the Standard of Perfection, which is a book that's been in publication for, 200 years, when people, or whenever, maybe 100 years ago, they would have shows at Madison Square Garden where the gentleman farmer would come and they would show their birds. So it's these breeds are very old. They're from all over the world. And then the newer breeds are generally, they're mixes of two birds. Like one of my favorite is called the showgirl, which is actually either cocks or hens, but it's I know, right? It's a combination of a silky and a naked neck.
Oh,
and
it's a
bizarre looking thing. But this is the thing about these new breeds that are accepted into the Standard of Perfection. There has to be a certain amount of people who are breeding them. They have to be over a certain amount of years that have been bred, and they have to be shown within the system of the poultry shows like a certain amount of times. So it can take, 10 years to have one of the birds admitted to the Standard of Perfection. They're very picky, and they want to make sure that they keep them, perfect, if you will. Right.
Well, it almost sounds like getting a new word put into the Oxford English Dictionary, like it has to be in use for a certain amount of time, it has to make it to social media, that kind of thing.
There was a time when the Poultry Association that, made our food and this association were closely linked. I think all of that's kind of gone out of fashion now, since hormones are used to make the chickens grow really fast and with larger breasts, and we would these people who were raising these chickens for show would keep them at a standard, so there was always stock to choose from. Like the heavy meat producers and the heavy egg layers, and like those were the practical reasons that people were keeping them, but also just the showmanship of the birds and the beauty of the feathers and so forth. Right.
So for you as a photographer, what do you prefer? Is it the hen or the cock? I'm serious, because we know that the cock, like every bird, right? Pretty much, as far as I know, every bird that's the male that has the prettier feathers.
It's true, but it's the thing. When I began this project, I think what surprised me about the chickens was they were beautiful, of course, but I set out to create and to capture, I should say, I wanted to capture the personality of the bird. So when I photograph them, I'm really looking for the bird to give me something, to strut its stuff, or to like show me a side of it that I wasn't expecting. And so, I mean, it'd be great also if the bird had perfect feathers and a big red comb, but you know, there are all kinds of birds there. And some of them are a little bit beat up. Maybe they're molting, or maybe they're not old enough, or what have you. But I found, the cocks are actually more beautiful because their plumage is more exaggerated. But I've gotten gorgeous shots of the hens because they're just more, maybe, have a better personality.
Right. Because cocks, they're aptly named sometimes.
Yes.
They can be dicks.
So true.
But
also it's about age. I mean, it's interesting that I've met a lot of cocks and hens now, and their personalities are really different. And just like dogs, certain breeds are known for certain personalities. True. Some are more high strung and some are very docile. Yeah. And then of course with age, if you photograph a pullet, which is a chicken under a year, they may be even more so. Or if they're in their teenage years, for instance, you may not even be able to keep them on the background because they're just like flighty and crazy and like wild-eyed. Yeah. But then the older birds, they're going to just stand in front on the background, and they look right into the camera. That's the thing that I never got used to. They like, even though my camera was like 10 feet away. Right. When I would get home and look at the images, that like their eye was focused right on the lens of the camera. So always so surprising.
They were probably trying to figure out whether or not they could eat it. They're like, "You're not eating my beak." Like that's all. There's this one hen that won't go back in the coop at night, and I know she's going to get eaten by a mongoose sooner or later. But she keeps eating. Like in the morning, we put out the cats' food, and she just like if the cats aren't around, she'll eat all of their food, and then the cats get nothing. Like she does not want to go. And it's not like we don't have plenty of stuff for her to eat. We have like an acre of land. She always goes for the cat. She goes for easy. she's that
What kind
way.
of breed is she?
She's some kind of wild chicken. There's so many wild chickens in Hawaii, like it doesn't.
I was wondering about that because, I know Key West they're notorious for having wild chickens. Yeah.
Yeah. They're pretty much considered a pest here. So like to that point, even though we have mongoose, which, actively attack chickens, and, they just kill them for the hell of it. Like they don't even eat them. They just like kill them and then leave them for you to discover the next day.
Wow.
So yeah, they're such I hate those little things.
Have you lost some of your chickens to mongoose?
Ironically, no. In our last house, we had neighbors whose dogs always seemed to find their way into our yard and kill our chickens. And, but since we moved here, so far, so good. We haven't had anything. And we have 2 cats, so they probably keep the mongoose under control. Right. Yeah, we have. And actually, there's a bunch of stray cats, too, that don't bother the chickens either, but they probably also help with rats and mongoose.
Right. Wow. But it's wild out there.
Yeah, seriously. It's a little bit Wild West here. Sometimes people are like, yeah, anything goes in Hawaii.
Well, I live in Brooklyn and I live across the street from a cemetery, and we have, sometimes there'll be like 10 or 15 raccoons going through our garbage. So it can be wild in the middle of the city too.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with New York and Brooklyn. Although I never lived in Brooklyn, but I'm familiar with some of the wildlife that can survive. And I hear that there's some coyotes too, right?
I'm not seeing any coyotes.
Yeah, you don't see them, but I hear they're around, and they seem to flock to kind of just living on the verge of the cities now, like all over the country. So
poor guys.
So you said your favorite cock was or chicken was the silky mix with the The bare neck?
That's one of the new ones.
That's just one of the new ones.
I think that's a really cool, interesting bird. But I mean, there are so many, like I think people's favorites. I can't tell you that I have one favorite one because I do have a lot of them, but I like the Polish. You know, they have that shock of hair that comes out of the top of their heads.
Yeah.
And
the one that looks like Rod Stewart, that one?
Yes.
Okay.
And then on top of that, I think is so interesting. There's I guess it's a gene. I've never dabbled in chicken breeding, but if it's called a frizzle. So if you breed a frizzle with another bird, any kind of bird that you have, the feathers will grow from back to front. And so they're all curly.
Oh,
and that will create, that's its own like thing, you know, like a frizzle Polish is a really interesting bird.
Right.
And then there's like the really beautiful sea brights, which they're laced. So every single feather has is tipped in a different color. Like, so it looks like it's actually sewn on or something. It's just absolutely beautiful. And then one of my favorite birds is called a cochin. I'm sure it's a very popular. You probably know what that is, right?
Yes, I do. I believe I do.
They have the.
I definitely have heard of them. I'm trying to picture one right now.
They have sort of a really their backside is like really full. So it's like but it's really, this is a great story. Queen Victoria was gifted a cochin and whenever she was in power, and it became, from a Chinese emperor. It's a Chinese bird.
Right.
And it took England by storm. Like so much so that people stopped breeding all other birds.
Oh, wow.
It was that exciting. And if you think about it, during that time was when the bustle came into fashion.
Right.
And I am absolutely sure, and I've not read anything about it, but if you look at a cochin, their backside is like almost as high as their head, and it's all feathers. You don't see their feet. It's just, they're just like one block of feathers, and then their butts are like big and round.
That totally makes sense.
Isn't that hilarious?
That absolutely makes sense, because we do know that throughout the world, you know, especially when we look at some of the kind of native tribes, if you want to call, from Papua New Guinea or wherever, a lot of times the males in many of these cultures will paint themselves to mimic birds.
Wow. Yep.
So it's not a far leap, especially in an age before the internet and, all the distractions that we have now, for people to have mimicked, a bird in fashion.
Yeah.
And there's probably still a lot of fashion that we just don't even, shoes and all kinds of things.
Well, in England also, again, back to England because they're big on their bird stuff, but the hats that women wear.
Yes.
The
Audubon Society kind of stuff.
Yep. Another one of my favorite birds is the modern game. And they are super skinny. They're very tall, and they have very tall legs. And they were originally the modern game. They were bred for fighting because they're tall and skinny, and they do something called dubbing, which is so sad to me, but they cut off their combs. Yeah. So they have a clean head, and they cut off their wattles as well. So they're like they don't even look like a chicken.
Right.
They have super tall legs, and they have a super long neck. And but they did this because they didn't want the birds to bleed, right, basically, when they were fighting.
Yeah.
But they're such beautiful, elegant, and weird. They look like dinosaurs.
Right. Is that that big thing that looks like Big Bird, and they have the video? It like walks out of it looks like a person in a bird suit. Is that
it's
that
not
big
very
one? Or
fluffy? It's not fluffy. It's not fluffy. The feathers are very close to the bird itself, and it doesn't have any feathers on. It's not feather legged, so it has a clean feet. But they're very just elegant.
Like about how big we talking? Like,
well, I mean,
when you say big, like tall.
A foot.
Okay. Because the one I'm talking about is like human size. This.
Oh my goodness. I've not seen that.
You haven't seen that? Oh, girl, I got to show you.
I know. You really do. Can you eat it?
I don't know about that. I'd be afraid to try and stick that one in my mouth.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's disturbingly large, and it doesn't even look like an animal. It literally looks like somebody in their Halloween costume.
Good grief. And what part of the world is it?
I have no idea. Somebody sent me the video. Actually, there's a couple of videos floating around. I will share it with you.
You really need to. I want to see that.
Yeah. It's wild. So I'm not sure I even need to ask you what my next question was, which is how do chickens and art intertwine? Like, because I think that you are rare in the sense that I think most people would look, they're like, oh, I'm a photographer. I'm too good to take pictures of chickens. Like I have to take, some other kind of, pictures, or at least, chicken when it's cooked or something like that. But, like, where do you see the two come together? What do they have in common?
Well, I mean, I guess they're beautiful. And I love the idea of creating a portrait from animals. Now, animal photography is nothing new. True. I mean, William Wegman took it to the extreme level. I mean, he's like one of the most famous art photographers known. He uses Weimaraners, and they became super famous, and he's done everything with them. And they're in museums. But I guess, I've always just been attracted to whatever I'm attracted to, and I'm an artist. So that's where that intersection happens. When I first began photographing the birds, people made fun of them. They're like, oh, that's so silly. Chickens, no one, whatever. They're things you eat.
Right.
But over time, the people who got it, like, saw the humanity. Like, for me, maybe the most profound part of photographing these chickens is that we eat them. We eat them. And here they are in this amazing network of people lifting them up and showing their beauty. And when I would take one of these gorgeous creatures and put it on my backdrop and light it and work with it to get it to, like, give me some kind of emotion, or, whatever you do when you're shooting a portrait, all I could think about is, like, I've eaten your people. And you're standing on, seriously.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I have goats. I have chickens.
You're standing on my background, giving me, like, your everything. And it humbled me.
Yeah.
It really humbled me. Like, I don't know. And then the rest is, like, when people see them and they're like, one of my favorite stories was someone emailed me. She's like, I love to get drunk with my girlfriends, and we go through your book and talk about which chicken we'd have sex with.
Oh dear.
You know what? But, like, they see these as people. They see the personality. They get it. They get that this one is macho, and that this one is shy, and that this one is, sexy. Like, they are really giving you the full spectrum of personality. And I think, I'm not a vegetarian. Right. In fact, they serve chicken at the poultry shows.
Oh,
right.
Yeah, but the poultry show, though, those aren't necessarily eaten chickens, right? Those are show chickens.
They're all edible.
They're all edible, technically.
But do you want to eat a chicken that? I mean, I was with I did a CSA for many years, and our farmer decided to introduce chickens, and was like, that's great. We would love to buy, eat chickens from your farm. And then we got them, and they run around freely all day long, eating whatever they want. And they were the worst cooking chickens I'd ever eaten.
Yeah.
There's just their flesh was hard.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wrote the book. That's honestly, that is why I wrote the book, because my friend, she was raising, she got the birds from the hatchery and as chicks, and they were like, at least half of them will be hens. Every last one of the 50 was a dude. Like every single one of them was a rooster.
Wow.
And so she's like, Adrian, I don't know what the hell to do with these. She's like, they're tough, stringy, and dry. And I was like, give me a crack at it.
So you figured out how to, I'm curious, tell me.
Well, steam, low, slow water. Like you don't want to roast them. You don't want to fry them unless they're very young. You don't want to, cook them with that kind of direct heat. It's all about the low and the slow. And now if it's an older one, it might take a couple of days to get them to lighten up, to be palatable. But for the most part, I have found that the average cock or, older laying hen will take about an hour and a half. So you can steam them. You can, like Chinese style. You can any kind of stew. So think of like Moroccan tagines. You could even do like a paella if you time it right. You can do really any kind of, like the old fashioned. Actually, when my friend told me this, the first thing that came to mind was coq au vin, which is, coq is cock in French, and it's stewed in wine. The cockaliki in Scotland is, pretty popular. Most people know about that. And it's just cooked down. It's like a soup, basically. In Jamaica, which is my family background, cock soup. Like every Jamaican will tell you about every Jamaican has a cock soup story. I have no idea why, but they all have one. They all have something about it. It's incredibly throughout the animal kingdom. I tend to talk over myself. I apologize, but throughout the animal kingdom. In the farming scenario, the males are always expendable, right? Because first of all, you have more than two cocks in a space, and they're going to fight each other unless they have unlimited numbers of hens to choose from. They will fight. They will beat the shit out of each other. So you can, for every 15 hens, you got to have just one cock. Because anybody else, and they will fight to the death. They don't care if they're brothers. They really go after each other. And the same thing with bulls and, bears, like any other kind of animal, they just fight. The males always fight. So when you have them in a farming situation, you have to, I'm borrowing a buck right now to breed my doe. And I have to keep him separate from her son because he will kill him.
Wow.
To thinking that even though he's the son is a wether, so he has no balls. But he will kill him because he knows that he could, in theory, is competition.
All right. Yeah.
So anyway, I just sent you here through Skype the giant chicken video if you want to watch that and give us your reaction.
Okay, I'm looking at it. Oh, good grief. Oh, my gosh.
It's a little frightening, isn't it?
Oh, he's in Russia. Of course he's in Russia.
Yeah, right? And I've seen other videos with birds, totally different videos with birds that size.
That's a Brahmin.
Is that right? Oh, that's right. That's right. I did see that. I did look that up at one point. Now you're reminding me.
Holy cow. That is the biggest.
It doesn't even look like a bird, right? It looks like somebody in an outfit.
I wonder what.
It's like some kind of Chernobyl chicken.
That is insane. That is absolutely insane. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's definitely a Brahma.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Can you imagine if you got that one in the studio? What would you do?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I couldn't get it up on the background. It would be.
You have to build a new set for that
Yes, chicken. I really would. Well, I did, I did photograph some chickens while I was at the poultry shows, and they're pretty big. That's an incredible chicken. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So how do you tame a cock like that, like for photographing purposes, like when you want to photograph, what is it? Because mine are like totally wild. They would never let me, the mama hen would never let me near the babies when they were babies, and they chase me down for food, but they won't let me handle them. How do you?
Well, I think
go on.
It's different when these birds are handled a lot.
Yeah,
from very early. Some of these people in the spring, they'll hatch out maybe 200 birds, and then they'll cull, is what they call.
Yeah.
They kill off the ones that aren't going to be used, or they'll just save them and eat them.
Right.
But they're constantly handled so that they're picked up, they're looked at, their feather size, they're looking at their feet to make sure that their feet look good, that their head isn't, they have to be perfect. So probably one of them is getting handled every single day or more.
Right.
And so that is why they're a little bit, and they actually work with them to pose. Like they actually, when they're on my set, they have a long little stick that they can touch the beak and it will hold its head up more, or just tap the backside and it will hold its butt up a little bit more. I mean, some birds, like the silkie, for instance, I mean, they cannot see. The silkies are the ones that have
the lampshade head.
Yes, they're just like they're covered. Their feathers actually have less barbs than any other of the birds, so they look like they have fur. And they're from China, and they're a delicacy. They have all dark skin and dark meat, and so you see them hanging in Chinatown. Yes. I'm sure.
Yes.
Those poor things, they cannot see at all. You put them on the background, and they will just, like, their heads will go straight to the ground. Aww. And so you have to grab. So what the owner will do, I mean, there's lots of different techniques. Like, you grab its back end and kind of shake it, and it will, like, sit up a little bit. And sometimes when a bird is tired, you have to remember that these birds, they have traveled. They've been put in a cage, right? They get stuck in a truck. They drive, I don't know, depending on how far they come. It could be an hour, it could be 2 hours, it could be 4 hours, and some people drive across the country to go to these poultry shows. Mm-hmm. So they've been in a truck, then they get put on a long table with thousands of other birds. They're spending the night next to a bird they've never even met, right? And then they get pulled out and handled by the judge to look at its feathers and feet and head and like the shapes. It gets measured and weighed and all kinds of stuff. And then after it's, been manipulated in all these kind of ways and it's in a weird place, they bring it over to my set and they stick it down on the background. Right. So the bird is like, what the hell? Like you got to think about like what this bird has been through. I always feel so bad for it. But, so there's a variety of ways in which to get the bird. One is with the stick to get it to stand up a certain way. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes I'll go over and pick the bird up and just rub its head and look at it and talk to it. And then I'll put it back. I don't handle it too much because if I break a feather, I don't want to be, I do not want to be blamed for that. But there's other ways of like turning the bird upside down and letting it flap its wings to get the energy out and putting it back up. Or another great trick that works, and it works across all species, is to go and get the opposite sex of a bird that bird does not know. And bring it over to the set and kind of wave it in its face. And if it's a male particularly, it will perk right up. And it will start to like, show itself, like shoulders back, head up high, strutting around. And it works on females too. I've seen it both ways. And that is like a wonderful little trick to get the bird to pose.
You just reminded me of something that surprised me when I, had my roosters and the hens, is how differently they, because like if as a novice you don't notice any difference, but when you look at the the stance, the positioning of the wings, and, kind of, the personalities, like you said. But even just visually, there is, more beyond the comb, right? Because the females can have a comb and waddle, right? Yep. They stand totally differently. The male, they almost look like they're wearing little tuxedos, like they put their arms down, their wings down to their sides, where the females kind of push back more, towards the rear. And I found that really fascinating that there was even that difference between the male and the female. And that it's not, and then when you talk about him, standing more erect and getting, like showing some interest basically all of a sudden in what's going on. That really kind of brought back that image.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, that just works across all species.
Right. Yeah, it really is fascinating. And because I was talking about the goat, and our goat, when the buck came in, actually the buck makes this hilarious, getting it on face.
I would like to see that.
Oh,
face.
It's on my Facebook page.
I have to look at it.
He curls his upper lip when, he'll sniff around her rear area, and then he'll flip his upper lip and smile.
And how does the female take it?
It depends if she really wants anything to do with him.
Right.
So when she first met him, he was trying to get close to her. And she just kept standing up on her hind legs to as if to say get the away from me, and I am bigger than you.
Oh my gosh.
And then he, after a while they started to buddy up, and then she went into heat, and then the two of them were just kind of nuzzling up against one another the whole time. It was really cute. So, and then she's not in heat anymore. So she's like, get me away from this guy. She's like, get me away from him.
Is it like a violent, weird thing? I can't imagine two goats having sex.
You know what? I've never actually been there for it, to be honest. But, his little pink torpedo kind of made an appearance, and it wasn't pretty.
Well, when chickens, this is the thing. I've seen many chickens have sex.
Yeah,
but
they're pretty rapey.
Very, very, I'm sorry?
They're rapey. The roosters.
It is, and it's very fast.
Yes.
It's that coitus kiss, which is bizarre to me. It's like they have this one hole that's for everything.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre.
It's so true. And they're like, the males, they'll bite the hen on the head and hold her down. And she's like, get the off of me. And then,
right?
And then he's like, okay, I'm done. Go.
Yeah, right?
Exactly.
I'm done with you. Next.
Exactly. And, and it's kind of funny to watch them in the wild like that too, because we used to live behind a brew house. And so they always have barrels of grain out there. And there would be, this mama hen with her chicks, and this rooster would show up all the time and chase her. And she would try to find the highest tree she could find just to get away from him. She was like, leave me alone. I'm, teaching my kids. I'm teaching my kids how to forage for food. Now just leave us alone.
Well, maybe someone has shared with him about the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Yeah, well.
This concludes part 1 of our interview with Tamara. Join us next week when we will delve more into her cookbooks, learn about what she has in store for us next, and how to respect food coming from animal sources. This and more next week on the Nutrition Heretic Podcast.
The Nutrition Heretic Podcast is a production of Savor the Journey, LLC. Our audio editor is Nicola Popovich. Our podcast manager is Crystal McLean, and our operations manager is Michelle Med. I'm your host, Adrian Hugh, the Nutrition Heretic. You can find us at the new and improved nutritionheretic.com, where you can download the Nutrition Heretic's free shit list of 7 health foods to avoid like the plague. You can also listen to previous episodes at nutritionheretic.com/podcast. Be sure to like us on social media for updates. Our Facebook page is
facebook.com/nutritionheretic, and on Twitter @NutriHeretic. Contact us with show ideas, questions, or if you want to be a guest. And don't forget to rate our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher.